Dark Souls is my favorite game of all time, and I've played it a lot. That's an intense understatement, too. I've played the game enough that I've used nearly every single weapon in the game for a full playthrough at least once. There are around 20 weapons that I haven't used for a full playthrough, and they're somewhat scattered through the weapon classes, but there are some weapon classes that I've used every weapon from. One of those, believe it or not, are the curved swords, and there's enough variety in the weapon class that I think it could be worth it to try and use every curved sword in a different context through a single run. Some curved swords are seemingly just worse than others, but there are certain contexts in which those ones will actually be more useful than the others, which I'll highlight as we get there. Admittedly, the only reason I thought about doing this sort of run in the first place is the fact that the scimitar is the starting weapon for the Wanderer class. The Asylum is kind of the only spot it's going to be useful, since it's one of those that are simply worse than others. There are other ones, like the Jagged Ghostblade, that seem like they simply won't be useful compared to even, say, the Falchion, but I'm getting ahead of myself. For now, let's get through the Asylum, which is made slightly easier by the fact that the scimitar does slashing damage, which the Asylum Demon is weak to. It's not exactly hard at the worst of times, but this does technically help a little bit. I'm going to be immediately replacing the scimitar with what might be the worst curved sword to use for a full playthrough, the Jagged Ghostblade. It has the lowest AR of any curved sword, on top of having the worst scaling, not being buffable, and being one of the shortest reaching. That said, it is very good for one specific thing, the very beginning of the game. We get it from Anor Londo, which we can access immediately from the ghosts that wield it. They take 8 entire two-handed attacks to kill, 2 full stamina bars, on top of needing a transient curse, but we can grab 6 firebombs from Firelink Shrine, which should be just enough to take out the first 7 ghosts if you group them up correctly. That, on top of the 4 humanity and backing up your save file, makes it pretty easy to get the blade. It's a lot easier if you start as the Pyromancer, since the fireballs are as good as firebombs and you're not limited, but then I wouldn't have had any use for the scimitar since the Falchion is literally just better. With the Ghostblade in hand, it's pretty easy to run down to Blighttown and up from the bottom of it to grab the Falchion, just behind the first Blowdart Sniper from the bottom. I went up a bit farther just to grab Power Within. You can climb up here, up this ladder, then drop down this one to fight the Wall Parasite from behind and not have to deal with its funky and incredibly punishing attacks. I'm actually going to follow a fairly normal progression path just so I can make use of the Jagged Ghostblade for a decent chunk of time. The Undead Burg doesn't offer any challenge with this thing, including the Black Knight, even entirely unupgraded, and the Taurus Demon doesn't either. On my way up to the parish, I made sure to take out the other Black Knight as well for a chunk. I should only need 7 chunks if I routed this out properly, since I won't be maxing out the Falchion. Actually, I should only need 1 set of each upgrade material, not including dragon scales, which I'll elaborate on in time. With the Falchion at +5, it's going to be better than an unupgraded Ghostblade for now, but there is one more thing that the Jagged Ghostblade is going to be the best for, since it's the only curved sword we have access to right now that does bleed damage. Getting past the Tortalos in the Asylum is always somewhat of a chore with the short weapon, but it's nothing egregious. The Stray Demon is excessively weak to bleed, to the point where I'd rather fight it with an unupgraded Bandit's Knife than a fully upgraded, well, anything that doesn't cause bleed really. That means the Jagged Ghostblade makes short work of it, chunking its health every 3 hits, giving us some extra souls, a Titanite slab, and the doll for the Painted World later. Now it's time to actually start making use of the Falchion, starting with the Bell Gargoyles. The slight extra range compared to the Ghostblade made the hollow mob a little easier to deal with, and the gargoyles don't really fare much better. What baffles me is that this is a +5. This is the upgrade level this thing is supposed to be at during this fight in a casual playthrough. I didn't get the large ember early or anything. The Falchion is just fast enough to shred the gargoyles extremely easily. There are enemies with slash resistance that make the curved swords not as insanely good, but apparently this is not one of them. In pursuit of a fairly normal progression path, I'm going to go down to Darkroot to fight the butterfly before I forget, grabbing the wolf ring for some extra poise on the lower burg on the way. If you drop down here, you can run straight down to the ring instead of running all the way around. I expected the Moonlight Butterfly fight to end up being 3 cycles, but after opening with the laser and waiting for a few more projectiles, I was proven wrong. 2 cycles with a +5 is a lot better than I would have expected. She didn't even fly over me in the second phase, so I didn't need to worry about trying to dodge the weird bomb that she uses that I still don't know how to dodge every time. With that, we can head up through Havel's tower, gently taking his ring along the way. That takes us to the Taurus Demon's arena and straight out the door to the lower burg. This level is one of the most annoying in a first playthrough, but once you understand what you're doing, with the wolf ring, poise, and positioning properly, it becomes one of the simplest and easiest. The Falchion is a bit too short to hit the thieves through the doors, but that's not too much of an issue with its speed. That makes the second trio of thieves even easier since they're all grouped up for you. The Capra Demon also went fairly well, with the second dog not even chasing me up the stairs. It's genuinely not often that I beat the Capra Demon hitless, even after my hundreds of runs in this game, so I'm kinda proud of that. I want to show the rest of this fight because, like I said, I'm proud of it, so I want to take this opportunity to mention that we are almost at 10,000 subscribers, which is an insane number that I thought I would never even get close to reaching. I would absolutely love to get to 10,000 by the end of the year. It's less than 100. I would greatly appreciate a subscription and also all the other algorithm things if you would like to see me get drunk on stream for the 10,000 subscriber special. The Depths offers us two very important upgrades to our damage, the Large Ember and the Pyromancy Flame. The Large Ember is fairly easy to get, and the Pyromancy Flame we can get later by saving Laurentius from these barrels. The Butchers go down to 2 backstabs and an R1, so luckily there's not much of a threat down here. Even the Giant Rat goes down to a single plunging attack. The Channeler is always a little scary to fight, especially when you catch it in part of its patrol when it's standing next to the 2 crates with the rats. Actually, for that reason, it's pretty rare that I fight it at all, but for this run I wanted the large Titanite shard next to it since I'll need 27 of them eventually, and the speed of the Falchion makes the rats kind of a non-issue. I grabbed the golden pine resin from the burg earlier, and it makes the Gaping Dragon take far less time than it would otherwise. It's extremely weak to lightning, and the speed of the curved swords makes them the best class to buff, hence why I'll be leveling my faith to at least 35 before touching any other stat with my dexterity already at 40. With Power Within, that fight wouldn't have even lasted past the first charge since it's a flat 40% damage buff. With the Large Ember and the extra large shards I got from the Crystal Lizards earlier, I can get the Falchion to +7, get the Pyromancy Flame and attune Power Within, and go back to the Asylum because I forgot to grab the Rusted Iron Ring, before heading down to Blighttown to farm for some large shards. Actually, it's extremely rare that I use more than one weapon, especially without glitches because of the complete lack of upgrade materials beyond what you need for a single +15 or +5 depending on the upgrade path. There are 7 static chunks in the entire game. The rest you need to farm for, which is exactly enough to get a single weapon to +15, which is why I routed this run the way I did. That said, farming the leeches, especially with 10 humanity, really wasn't that bad at all. By the time I had 20 large shards, enough to get the amount that I needed from Sen's Fortress, I only had done 4 or 5 runs, taking about 20 minutes. As much as I'd rather not farm at all, this is definitely encouraging me to do some more multi-weapon runs. If there's a class or a category of weapons you'd like to see me do with this style of run, I'd be happy to try it out. Anyway, I normally only have a +5 or a +15 for Quelaag. It's very, very rare that I go out of my way to get the shards necessary for a +10 without getting a +15. That said, a Falchion +10 with Power Within should be more than enough for this fight. We do plenty of damage, over 1000 for a stamina bar, and oh, it's over. A 30-second fight with a fairly normal and easy to get upgrade level at this point in the game. Okay. Anyway, I know Ceaseless won't offer much resistance, considering the special kill, but at least it's an extra 20k souls. Real quick, now that I'm in Sen's Fortress, I'm gonna go ahead and kill the Prowling Demons down in the Tar. The first one can be killed extremely quickly with a plunging attack, the second is also pretty weak, unlike the other two. The gimmick with these 2 Prowling Demons is that they're much stronger than the others in the Tar, and they're right next to each other. Ideally, you have enough damage to kill one before the other can attack, but chances are one of them will be firing lightning at you while you're fighting the other. Luckily, I do have a couple extra lightning pine resin, and that, on top of Power Within, should... Okay, well I guess I can't use the pine resin, but Power Within should give me enough DPS to successfully take out the demons fairly easily. The first one doesn't respawn if you kill it, just remember to actually pick up the Titanite before you die. Actually, these 2 are optional. You can get enough Titanite by killing the one in the Parish and the first 2 in Sen's, getting the rest in Anor Londo, but I actually kinda like the gimmick of the fight with these 2. It feels almost like a mini boss fight. Oh, that's why they're called mini bosses. On the way through the rest of Sen's, I made sure to take out the giants for the chunks and grab all 6 large Titanite shards along the way, and the Shodel, which is probably the most useless curved sword. It has significantly lower damage than the Scimitar, with the upside that it can deal damage even while an enemy is blocking. That's probably more useful in PvP, but in PvE, I've already kind of learned to deal with enemies despite their shields. It might have been useful against the man-serpents, but I honestly just kind of forgot to use it against them. I do have a specific use for it soon, but I did try to use it for some of Anor Londo later, just to be sure I used every curved sword. The Iron Golem fight was pretty long because it's highly resistant to slash, but the fast attacks made sure he wasn't standing for at least the majority of the fight. With the firebomb throwing giant gone, that leaves no threat during this fight, and it's fairly easy. I made sure to get the Shodel to plus 10 now for a very important reason that will be glaringly obvious in hindsight soon enough, if you haven't already figured it out. Now that we're in Anor Londo, we can grab the first Demon Titanite from behind the first two sentinels, with another behind the main big elevator, and make our way across the rafters. From there, we can drop straight down to the Darkmoon Tomb bonfire to start farming for our third to last curve sword, the Painting Guardian Sword. This is the best curve sword in terms of DPS by far. We won't be using it until we get it to plus 15, but it's insanely strong compared to what else we have access to right now, to the point of being one of, if not straight up, the highest DPS weapon in the game. That said, I have done multiple full runs with this thing quite a while ago, so I do have another curve sword that will likely be used over it quite a bit. With that done, we can run through the rest of Anor Londo fairly easily to get our second to last curve sword, Quelaag's Fury Sword. This is the use I had in mind for the Shodel. Actually, originally I wanted to use the Falchion for this, but I had to justify using the Shodel somehow, since I forgot to use it in Sins. The strength requirement on Quelaag's Fury Sword is the highest of any curve sword at a staggering 11, so I had to make sure to level up my strength once. It's also the heaviest, so I had to put on Havel's Ring for now. To get the rest of the Demon Titanite for a plus 5, I fought the Titanite Demon in the tiny room. I used to struggle with this thing. It was a blight on all my boss weapon runs, but now it's kinda a non-issue, to the point where I'd take it over the Silver Knights you would need to fight in Siegmeyer's quest that also guard 2 Demon Titanite. Admittedly, the Fury Sword is a little underwhelming, especially when used against what's largely considered one of the hardest bosses in Dark Souls 1, on top of forgetting to use Power Within for most of the fight. I don't really consider it that, not anymore, but I wouldn't call it nearly the easiest fight either. The Fury Sword is the longest curve sword, and that range is very useful for how often Ornstein jumps around. Ornstein and Smough also happen to be fairly weak to fire, making this a good spot to try out the Fury Sword for the first time. Actually, Priscilla and Gwendolyn are both weak to fire as well, so we can head down to fight them too. I was gonna try to get a proof from one of the Crow Demons so I could get Dark Moonblade, but I think Sunlight Blade should be more than enough for the rest of the game, especially considering that I have the Fury Sword for things that are weak to fire. Because I'm not going out of my way in the Painted World, getting through it is fairly quick. You can easily just run through the first chunk of the level normally, right up to the Undead Dragon, and drop down from this ledge like this. The collision is a little funky, and it lets you skip basically right to Priscilla. Just be careful of the archers. Priscilla is extremely weak to fire, so as soon as you find her the first time, the fight is basically just over. Gwendolyn is also pretty weak to fire, so the fight would have been fairly quick if he did anything other than spam magic for as long as he did. You can easily get in and shred him in 2 cycles once he uses the bow, but until then I had to wait it out. With that bit of cleanup done, and my favorite armor set acquired, we can run down into New Londo, get to the top of the ghost house very easily by just running around the top to distract the ghosts, then run down to grab the very large ember. I also made sure to grab the Titanite chunks down here and the red tearstone ring just in case. As for the talisman to cast Sunlight Blade, the easiest to get by far is the Ivory Talisman from Rhea, which is easy enough to get with our damage. Andre can max out our Painting Guardian Sword now, which is by far our best weapon for the entire rest of the game, but I'll still be mixing things up because using only the Painting Guardian Sword doesn't make for a very interesting video or unique playthrough. I also realized I completely forgot to upgrade the Fury Sword to max, so I grabbed the Demon Titanite from the chest past the Silver Knights that are part of Siegmeyer's quest, and had Andre do that for me too. The Hydra is very weak to fire, and considering I want to keep Sunlight Blade for the Sif fight, the Fury Sword functions more than well enough to pop off only 5 of the heads to take it out. The Painting Guardian Sword easily shreds the Gold Golem and saves Dusk, and it, along with Power Within and Sunlight Blade, makes Sif veritably evaporate. There's really not much else to that fight in this run, she's just kinda gone. It would probably do the same thing to the 4 kings, but the Fury Sword does look much cooler and does definitely still shred them. It's only 6 attacks to take out each king, and my stamina bar leaves more than enough room to hit them 3 or 4 extra times before they fade away, meaning we can beat the fight in less than 3 kings very easily. After a short scuffle with the Darkmoon Nidus and a couple boars, the Archives are up next. The hardest part of the archives is right at the beginning, since I need to kill this golem to get the pendant, and the safest way to do that is to kill all the crystal hollows around here. Luckily, that's not too hard with the speed of these weapons, and the pendant is easy enough to get. Dying to Seath also isn't an issue with the rare ring of sacrifice I picked up in Anor Londo from on top of the ghost house earlier. I made sure to get grabbed by this specific Pasaka for very normal reasons, but my bloodstain ended up in a weird spot. Luckily, I was able to achieve it without too much hassle. Respawning also makes the music stop, meaning the Pasakas are largely docile. The rest of the archives and the crystal caves are effectively a straight shot if you know where you're going. Seath is weak to lightning and, well, that was technically a boss fight. The demon ruins are relatively sparse, which makes exploring them kinda tense, but otherwise, well, the worm was kinda hard to hit. The Demon Fire Sage is very weak to bleed, which the Painting Guardian Sword does, on top of the absurd DPS it deals otherwise, meaning this was a very short fight, even despite the fact it was jumping around quite a bit. The Centipede Demon, once it got on the platform, died. I was gonna add a qualifier, but I think that works too. You can see what happened to the poor thing. Obviously, the bed of chaos itself isn't really affected by our weapon, but it did go fairly well. I got bearded once, but I came back and finished up the fight no problem. Our last base game area, aside from the kiln, is the Catacombs, and it's probably the shortest if you know what you're doing. The entirety of the Catacombs themselves can be skipped by just dropping down to here, then down further. Pinwheel is the boss of all time, as usual. The Tomb of the Giants has a gimmick, the darkness, that makes it slow going in your first playthrough, but when it's not a factor because you've memorized the entire thing, it's a very, very short level. Nito is fairly weak to fire, even if the Painting Guardian Sword would have done more damage. I haven't really mentioned it, but the Fury Sword does have chaos scaling, meaning having 10 humanity gives us much more damage. I've had that every time I use the sword, and that's made it fairly good this whole time. Nito kills his own skeletons for me, making the rest of the fight a breeze, and we can move on to the DLC. I actually wanted to use our final curved sword, the Gold Tracer, for the entirety of the DLC, but we do need to go through about half the DLC to even get the thing. Granted, it's the half with a lot less going on, but it's still a good chunk we're missing out on using the weapon. Everything in the DLC is highly resistant to all the elements though, so I'll be using the Painting Guardian Sword until we reach the Gold Tracer. The Sanctuary Guardian is my favorite fight in the game, but its low health means using the highest DPS weapon in the game doesn't give me much time to enjoy it. As soon as I got a solid attack opportunity, the health bar disappeared completely. Calamite says hi, I sprint past, say hi to him and the dogs leading up to him, before going in and facing Artorias. Artorias isn't one of my favorite fights in the game, but even his much larger health pool couldn't stand up to the Painting Guardian Sword very well. I'm usually pretty slow with Artorias, being deliberate and careful with attacks, but the speed of the curved swords kinda makes that a non-issue completely. Greed tends to get me killed here most of the time. That was very much not the case here. I don't even know how to describe this fight in an interesting way. He attacked a couple times, I dodged, counter hit, and won very quickly, which is part of why the fan favorite boss isn't one of my personal favorites. Anyway, with him dead, we can actually grab our final curved sword of this run. You can just give Kieran the soul, but I want it. Anyway, we got the Tracer, go upgrade it, and have a fairly underwhelming weapon for the rest of the game, but damn if it's not worth how cool it looks. Wulusil is fairly quick to get through, even though the bloatheads take 2 hits instead of only 1. I made sure to grab the crest key, considering there have been many times I've forgotten it, before going through the hardest part of the DLC by far. These 3 bloatheads and 2 sorceresses are usually so annoying, and I have no idea why. I made it through without issue in this run, but that's very much uncommon. Manus was one of the hardest fights to learn in the game, but now that I've got it down, I can do it with just about any amount of damage and pretty much any moveset fairly easily. I usually use jumping attacks, but with the speed of the curved sword R1s, using as many of them as possible makes the fight much faster. Actually, the damage is still really good because of the speed of the weapon. He was a little mean with the Dark Rain followed immediately with the ring attack, but luckily I had just the right positioning to avoid all of it and take him out on my first try. After talking to Goff to go shoot down Calamite, we can face our final boss that actually poses a challenge. He was really kind, starting out with a glide into a tail slam, giving me plenty of time to deal a ton of damage, then just kinda continued using really easily punishable attacks, especially for the speed of the sword, and this ended up being a very fast Calamite fight. So much for posing a challenge, I suppose. Admittedly, if he had used any neck swipes, or well, any of the attacks he didn't use really, the fight would have been much harder, but the speed of the weapon didn't give me many opportunities to get unlucky. Gwyn is more of a ceremonial final boss once you get the parry timing down, and he doesn't last very long either. As much as I wish I could have used the gold tracer more, I still did enjoy using it quite a bit for what I did. This run, I am sorry for not uploading for like 3 weeks. It's been a lot going on, but I really enjoyed doing this run, even if I'm kind of struggling to actually get the recording done because of everything going on. But this was a really, really fun run to do. It kind of, I don't know, reignited a spark to continue playing Dark Souls, which is rare for these runs to do. As much as I love the game, it's not the same as when I used to, you know, when I started playing the game. But I don't know, this one evoked a nostalgia that no other run I've done has. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I love you all. I would especially like to thank Vin Spear, Lamb Astasol, Powdered Sugar, Manu, Generic Name, Abob, Eth, Lilith the Hammer Witch, Astral Lily, Executioner Smough, Qualag, Winter, Valedit, Nick Possum, Krista, Howling Nocturne, Ryasune21, Racuna, Anthony, Manarok, and Ryan Rickard. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. I don't know how to end this.